Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randirhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
I don't think it's for me to say whether the conversation I had with the president was an effort to obstruct. I took it as a very disturbing thing, very concerning, but that's a conclusion I'm sure the special counsel will work towards to try and understand what the intention was there and whether that's an offense. Circumstances first, I was alone with the President of the United States, or the President-elect, soon to be President.
Ew.
The subject matter, I was talking about matters that touch on the FBI's core responsibility and that relate to the President-elect personally, and then the nature of the person. I was honestly concerned that he might lie about the nature of our meeting, and so I thought it really important to document. That combination of things I'd never experienced before, but it led me to believe I got to write it down, and I got to write it down in a very detailed way. My common sense, again, I could be wrong, but my common sense told me what's going on here is that he's looking to get something in exchange for granting my request to stay in the job. I took it as a direction. Right. I mean, this is the President of the United States with me alone saying, I hope this. I took it as this is what he wants me to do. Now, I didn't obey that, but that's the way I took it. A really significant fact to me is, so why did he kick everybody out of the Oval Office? Why would you kick the Attorney General, the President, the Chief of Staff out to talk to me if it was about something else? And so that to me, as an investigator, is a very significant fact. But we're talking about a foreign government that, using technical intrusion and lots of other methods, tried to shape the way we think, we vote, we act. That is a big deal. And people need to recognize it. It's not about Republicans or Democrats. They're coming after America, which I hope we all love equally. They want to undermine our credibility in the face of the world. They think that this great experiment of ours is a threat to them, and so they're going to try to run it down and dirty it up as much as possible. That's what this is about, and they will be back because we remain, as difficult as we can be with each other, we remain that shining city on the hill, and they don't like it. It's a fair judgment. It's my judgment that I was fired because of the Russia investigation. I was fired in some way to change, or the endeavor was to change the way the Russia investigation was being conducted. That is a very big deal.
Yes, it's a very big deal. That whole hearing was a very, very big deal. Hearing of the century. Hearing of the century. Oh, my God. I need a My Pillow. I have to put my head down. I'm going to put my head down, and I'm never going to pick it up again. No, never. I'm just going to start weeping, and I'm not going to stop. But my favorite part of the hearing was when Comey was talking. He said Lordy. He said Lordy. He said it a couple of times. I love that he says Lordy. Sweet baby Jesus. I love when he says Lordy. I love it's like the whitest thing a person can say, isn't it? Lordy or Christopher Columbus. Heavens to Murgatroyd. Heavens to Betsy. It gets no whiter than that, really. And he is pure white, is what he is. But that was amazing. The only person that did more damage to Donald Trump than James Comey today was Donald Trump. And Donald Trump Jr. and his attorney, his personal attorney, Kasowitz. These are the only people that did more damage to Donald Trump than Comey did. And all Comey did was tell the truth. And it's really, it's an amazing story. And you know what the most amazing part of it is? Truly, I mean, we all know what happened. Everybody knows what happened. James Comey was fired because Trump wanted the Russia investigation to go away. And Trump decided to lie about that fact when he sat down with Lester Holt and called him a showboat, when he said he was a nut job, when Trump called Comey a nut job, he decided to lie. He decided to lie about, we fired him because of the Hillary thing. He kept changing his story. He couldn't get it because he was so afraid that everybody was going to realize that he fired Comey because he wanted the Russia investigation, especially the portion that had to do with the PP tape and the portion that had to do with Flynn. And it ain't because Trump is loyal to Flynn. It's because Trump knows Flynn knows where the bodies are buried. And I almost mean that literally because we've had testimony from former FBI guys like Clint Watts from the counterterrorism part of the FBI, who said, "Oh, you want to know what happened? Follow the dead Russians." So I mean it almost literally. So the Trump decided to lie. But the most important thing, the most important and devastating thing, I thought as an American, was when Comey said, "Look, it's a slam. It happened. We were hacked. The Russians were in our election. There is no fuzzing that up. There is no, denying that. That is a true fact. That is why there was an investigation in the first place." And Trump did not care. He didn't care about that fact. He only cared about himself. There were no conversations between James Comey and Donald Trump with regard to why there was an investigation. And the reason why there was one was because the Russians hacked. The reason why 35 Russian spies were kicked out. The reason why Russian compounds in Maryland and New York were seized by the U.S. government, by Barack Obama's government, was because the Russians were hacking into our elections. And Trump never asked a single question about it. This came at the very end of this entire 2.5 hours, but it was the most important point that anybody could have made.
There should be no fuzz on this whatsoever. The Russians interfered in our election during the 2016 cycle. They did it with purpose. They did it with sophistication. They did it with overwhelming technical efforts. And it was an active measures campaign driven from the top of that government. There is no fuzz on that. It is a high confidence judgment of the entire intelligence community. And the members of this committee have seen the intelligence. It's not a close call. That happened. That's about as unfake as you can possibly get, and is very, very serious, which is why it's so refreshing to see a bipartisan focus on that, because this is about America, not about any particular party.
So that was a hostile act by the Russian government against this country?
Yes, sir.
Did the president, in any of those interactions that you've shared with us today, ask you what you should be doing or what our government should be doing or the intelligence community to protect America against Russian interference in our election system?
I don't recall a conversation like that.
Oh.
Never?
No.
Do you find it odd?
Not with President Trump.
Right.
I attended a fair number of meetings on that with President Obama.
Oh, my God. Right there. Kick him out. Bye-bye. So long, sucker. Don't let the door split you where the good Lord split you. Hit you. I'm serious. Oh, heavens to Betsy. You know what I mean. So I can't believe that was the most important portion. Everybody else knows why Comey was fired. Everyone knows it was to shut down the Russia investigation. How do we know? Because that's what Trump told the freaking Russians, who he had in his office the day after he fired Comey. And he told the Russians, woo, took the pressure off me there. This president has called the hacking of our elections a hoax. He's called it a witch hunt. He has said that it could be China, that it could be, a guy in Poughkeepsie, a 400-pound guy sitting on his bed. That was devastating right there. That in all of this, the president showed zero interest in the fact that the Russians hacked into our elections, that they hacked into the DNC. They hacked into the voter registration rolls. They were sending phishing emails to states across this country. More than 20 states, there were an attempted hack on the voter registration rolls. And now we're finding out that much more intrusion occurred than we previously thought. And the president of the United States, Donald Trump, never has a conversation with James Comey, who is investigating this portion, the counterintelligence investigation, which is what he was conducting over there at the FBI. The president never asks one single question through these dinners that he has with Comey at the White House, through the phone calls where he's calling him at home and he's going, stop calling me. never asks, what do I do to protect the American people? Do you think they're still at it? Do you think they're still in our systems? Do you think that they're going to do it again? How do we guard against it? What kind of cybersecurity measures do we have? Should we kick Kislyak out of the country because he seems to be a common denominator throughout all this? You know, should I get rid of Jeff Sessions? Should I get rid of, are there any other people that were compromised in my current administration? I need to know, because my first job is to protect the American people and their right to vote and their right to be heard. Instead, this president goes all out on a war against journalists, against Comey, against anybody that has the temerity to say that Russia was involved in our elections. Anytime anybody says it, his ego can't handle the fact that he had a little help from a hostile foreign government, so much so that he refuses to ask questions of people who could help him protect us. That's disgusting. That is just vile. And of all the things that were said today, and there were many, many things said today, but of all the things said today, I got to tell you, that was the most frightening response I'd ever heard by anybody who has any care or responsibility to do counterterrorism investigations to protect us against hostile actors who try to intrude in our democracy. I mean, I'm just going to play this one more time. This was so short. It's so sweet. It was 1 minute and 15 seconds. Okay, that's what this was. And I swear to God, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, all the hair, because I don't have time for self-care anymore.
There should be no fuzz on this whatsoever. The Russians interfered in our election during the 2016 cycle. They did it with purpose. They did it with sophistication. They did it with overwhelming technical efforts. And it was an active measures campaign driven from the top of that government. There is no fuzz on that. It is a high confidence judgment of the entire intelligence community. And the members of this committee have seen the intelligence. It's not a close call. That happened. That's about as unfake as you can possibly get, and is very, very serious, which is why it's so refreshing to see a bipartisan focus on that, because this is about America, not about any particular party.
So that was a hostile act by the Russian government against this country?
Yes, sir.
Did the president, in any of those interactions that you've shared with us today, ask you what you should be doing or what our government should be doing or the intelligence community to protect America against Russian interference in our election system?
I don't recall a conversation like that.
Never?
No.
Do you find it odd?
Not with President Trump.
Right.
I attended a fair number of meetings on that with President Obama.
He's a jackass.
He is. This president is a jackass. I cannot believe that he never once asked in all these conversations, never once asked, what do I do to protect the American people? Will they be back? And of course, Comey testified all day today to whoever, asked the question, are they done with us? Are the Russians done? And Comey, said, no, of course they're not done. They're not Republican. The Russians are not Republicans. The Russians are not Democrats. The Russians aren't anything except opportunists. The Russians aren't done messing around with American democracy. The Russians aren't done with breaking up our alliances or inserting themselves into the vote or picking somebody that they think will be friendly to them, and their worldview and their alignments in the world, their allies in the world, their friends in the world, like Iran. No, of course they're not done. Yes, they will be back. They're still here. It was the most amazing thing. And of all the questions, of all the things that were asked, and there were a lot, and Comey obviously, laid it out there, that the reason why he started documenting every meeting that he had with Donald Trump is because he knew Donald Trump was a liar. He knew he was a liar. He knew that he was a guy who could not be trusted. His word meant nothing. He felt, he didn't want to be alone in a room with him. Well, welcome to every other woman in the United States of America. No one wants to be alone in a room with Donald Trump. Nobody that I know. Not even Melania. She puts 1,000 miles between them every day? But he said, Lordy. He had me at Lordy. So, Comey is playing chess here. He's running an entire agency full of, hundreds of thousands of investigations, which he testified to today. And the president talked to him about none of the other ongoing investigations that Comey oversees, only was obsessing over the salacious parts of the dossier and cutting Michael Flynn loose. That's all he ever asked about. Not how do I keep the American people safe, not any of the other counterintelligence investigations that Comey was conducting. And he said there are tens of thousands of investigations ongoing inside the FBI every single given day. Trump never asked about any of those. Pretty sick. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.